Bundle up and mark your calendars. Blue Door's signature event is back. Join us on February 28th for Blue Door's coldest night of the year, Richmond Hill family-friendly fundraising walk. As part of a nationwide movement happening across the country and close to home, our community will come together to show care and compassion for our neighbors in need. This isn't just a 2 or 5 kilometer walk. It's a chance to take action locally while standing alongside thousands of Canadians from coast to coast. You can register, sponsor, volunteer, and fundraise in support of vulnerable individuals experiencing hunger, hurt, and homelessness in your community during these winter months. Every step makes a difference. For event details, visit cnoy.org/Richmond Hill. Let's walk together for people in need, because it's cold out there. Across the country, close to home, together, you can make a difference. See you on February 28th.
You're listening to On the Way Home with your host, Emmy Kelly.
Welcome back to On the Way Home, a podcast about housing, homelessness, and the systems and people working to make home possible. I'm your host, Emmy Kelly. Today, I'm joined by Alain Cadieux, Vice President of Tenant Experience and Quality Assurance at Ottawa Community Housing. Alain and his team support more than 32,000 tenants across 15,000 homes, and his work sits at the intersection of service quality, tenant experience, and responsible innovation. In this conversation, we explore what tenant experience really means at scale, how technology, including AI, can reduce administrative burden for staff, and how housing systems can shift from being reactive to proactive while staying deeply human-centered. Let's dive in. Thank you, Alain, for joining us on the show today. I'm so lucky to call Alain my friend and coworker. We serve together on the ONFA board, and Alain does amazing work at Ottawa Community Housing, and I love picking his brain. It is fast, intelligent, hardworking, and just everything you can imagine. So thank you for joining us on the show today, Alain. We're going to start off with our signature question. What does home mean to you?
Well, thank you for having me. It's a privilege. Always enjoy spending time with you. For me, home is stability. It's pride, it's dignity. It's where people feel safe. It's a right. It's a basic need for people and families. It's the foundation. You know, it's when housing is stable, communities can grow, flourish, and kind of succeed.
Truer words were never spoken. You support more than 32,000 tenants across 15,000 homes. Can you paint a picture for us and all our listeners of what tenant experience really means at that scale and what your team focuses on day to day?
Absolutely. At that scale, tenant experience is really about the tenant journey. It starts with the quality of the home, the community, and the services we provide from the moment someone applies for a home. The focus is really on providing responsible, reliable, quality service. It's about people feeling supported, respected, and heard. Ultimately, the goal is to add value, make housing services easier to access, to deliver quality work and respectful interactions. When home, services, communities are all aligned, the experience becomes something tenants can expect and count on.
And before we start talking about artificial intelligence or technology in the sector, which I know you're leading the way on, why do you believe this moment matters for community housing right now?
I would say the pace of change around us is accelerating. While the pressure on community housing continues to grow, as you know, the housing crisis. So for example, the telephone needed 75 years to reach 100 million users. Facebook took 4 years, ChatGPT took 1.3 months. So what once took a generation, now it's basically happening within a billing cycle. And the change of pace is shaping the expectation of every service, every interaction, and every organization. It's creating pressure, but also possibilities. We know that the adoption cycle is shrinking, and the next wave, I think, is already here. So the bigger question I ask myself is, are we ready? Because readiness now is going to become part of our strategic strengths as organizations or a sector. So for years, major technology took, decades to become mainstream. When I say mainstream, I mean 100 million users. So mobile internet took 10 years. Cloud computing, remember those discussions? Am I going to put my servers in the cloud? That took 8 years. And organizations planned around that cycle and that pace, but now that the adoption timeline are collapsing. So in the next year, what can we expect? If you read around artificial intelligence, you could expect maybe an AI assistant. Within the next 3 years, probably agentive AI or autonomous vehicles. Autonomous vehicles is a funny one to me because in 2023, they projected 2029 to be the year in which we would see autonomous vehicles. And we know there's about 40,000 autonomous vehicles now already deployed in this world. In the next 5 years, what can we expect? And it's a bit of a word that we don't use too often, service robotics, right? They project in 2030 to have about 6 million robots built annually or produced annually. And for me, I always hesitated in that possibility because when you think about robotics, you're thinking about artificial intelligence, you think about dexterity, and also mass production. And I always thought mass production was the biggest limiting factor because it's such specific technology that you need to build. But there's already in Q4 of last year in Asia, service robotics being released, mass produced, and then we know Q1 of this year in North America, there's going to be service robotics being reduced. And none of us want to buy the first generation, but it's quite feasible for us to think that by the 5th generation in 2030, we might be interested in it. So it's creating pressure, but also a whole bunch of possibilities. And I think change is arriving very quickly. And in my opinion, it's going to reward the organizations that are prepared to adapt with some clarity and confidence.
I have to ask before we go on to the next piece about like AI and technology. Did you ever think that your role when you stepped into tenant experience and quality assurance would involve like this, like you leading like technology advances at OCH?
And again, so the short answer is no. And I think it's not even any one individual who's now leading innovation. I think it's the big capital we are leading technology because we're all interested in it. So we all have different value streams that we're responsible for, let's say from a tenant experience, but also internally as you're serving your internal clients. And we're all thinking about how can technology be leveraged to allow us to be more effective, to deliver higher quality service, also to liberate some of our resources so we could reinvest in the next big thing. So absolutely was not predicting to be part of quality and innovation, but innovation is becoming at the center of a lot of our conversation because it's the opportunity that we could make a real difference.
So responsible AI is becoming a big conversation across sectors. In the housing world, what does responsible AI actually look like in practice?
Great question. I'll take a step back first. When we talk about artificial intelligence, I think it's important to understand there's like 5 major dimensions, right? Today we're talking about 2 dimensions, but there's the energy, there's the chips, there's the infrastructure, and then there's the large language models, the co-pilots and the ChatGPT, and then there's application. So for our sector at the moment, if we are venturing into AI, it's about the large language models and applications. So from a responsible AI, I think AI starts with understanding what problems are we trying to solve and who do we serve. I think if we keep that at the forefront of all of our decisions, we'll be in a good position. Also, we want to introduce technology that supports, not replace people. So it acts as a multiplier. I think keeping the human in the loop is kind of the line that we've been using at Ottawa Community Housing for the judgment, the empathy, the oversight, the accountability. Also means transparency with staff. The staff need to understand how tools are being used. Also with tenants, that they can trust the outcomes. And as leaders, we need to remain accountable. It doesn't mean because you're implementing AI suddenly it's the technology that is leading the organization or the value stream that you're responsible for. And I think it starts with starting small with low risk, high value cases, and then having governance and oversight, but also a willingness to say, hey, this isn't quite working as we expected because, everything's new. It doesn't feel right. Let's pause it. Let's further understand what's happening, why it's happening, and if there's any adjustments we need to make so we can feel have a higher level of confidence in the technology that we're pursuing.
One of the goals you've mentioned is reducing administrative burden. Where are you seeing technology and AI making the biggest difference for staff so far?
Well, it's fair to say, and I think most housing providers would agree with me, that the sector operates with limited resources and funding, aging stock, and a significant administrative burden driven by our regulations and our reporting requirements. I think at the individual level, the use of Copilot, ChatGPT, Claude, I think AI is already making a difference. It's either we're aware of it or we're not, because our teams are using it. I think it's helping staff spend less time on repetitive tasks, such as drafting emails, reports, responding to, for us, a big example was responding to access to information requests. Our legal team specifically, sometimes you had, documents of thousands and thousands of paged, where they would have to print out and go with a marker and kind of black out information we didn't want to share. Well, someone decided to start working on developing an agent that would do that for them. And it has like a 95% accuracy, where it does the 95% of it, and then they do only the last 5% as they read through. So people are using it, and reviewing documents, preparing files, preparing reports. It's happening. So at the individual level, it's happening. At a corporate level, 2 years ago, we sat in a room, and I think this is part of the strategy if we want to be successful. We sat in a room with a group of individuals who we know have a deep, large administrative burden. We asked them, what's the pebble in your shoe? What's the thing that makes your job much more difficult to deliver world-class service to your clients? And obviously, I think this would be probably pretty popular across our sector. They talked about the annual review and the rent calculation process. So for an organization our size, that means approximately 16,000 reviews each year. So through Project Social that we called, and working with an AI partner, we wanted to see if we could support with artificial intelligence the end-to-end process. That's receiving and organizing documents, that's validating submissions against the household review form, that's completing the rent calculation, that's generating a notice of decision or a missing information letter based on the defined rules. And it provides opportunity to focus on the tenant interaction and building that relationship, especially as the needs of our tenants are becoming more complex. So it's important to be able to spend time having a conversation with the tenant, explaining the outcomes, but also trying to get a pulse on whether this tenant will be able to next year submit their documents, or we need to be proactive in outreach and in education. In addition to that, we wanted a tool that kept the human in the loop. So, the review, validate and confirm the results while spending more time kind of explaining the outcomes to those tenants. It's been an experience. It's been a learning experience, a lot of lessons along the way. I initially thought, well, we're building just one AI tool that does everything. But the reality is you're basically putting together a bunch of AI tools to collectively work together. So one that receives the documents, one that reads the document, one that separates PDF files. It reads to say, oh, this is more than one document. And then one that reviews the household review form, handwriting versus, so you could expect that throughout the process, you're trying to solve really complex issues, and it hasn't been a smooth ride. And we don't want to sell it as something that has been a smooth ride, but we've learned a lot of lessons. In fact, when you go from where we were in a test site to production, well, we only found out, our own ignorance, but we only found out that 95% of projects don't even go from testing to production. So the fact that we're in production and we're getting rent calculations processed at the rate in which we're doing is a success in itself. But again, there's still quite a bit of a journey to go to have a product that allows us to, with certainty, confidence at 80%, that all of our rent calculations can be kind of processed with the oversight of our team.
So for the sake of our listeners, am I following you right to say that OCH is building an AI tool from like a series of tools to basically?
Well, the simplest way to say is we have a partner that has been with us on the journey from the beginning. They're the AI expert. We did some ideation around what would be the best idea to initiate an initial project. It became the annual review and rent calculation process. It's kind of a standalone that communicates with our tool that we have in-house. And it basically operates as if it was an individual entering information in our system while just reading in the documents as they're coming in. Well, while then, some information pops up to say, okay, this is the result of rent calculation based on all this information, it's increase of X. Do you agree? And the person who has the experience, the knowledge, and the skills to review that, so they're shifting from administrative entering information to actually validating and doing quality audits on the work. So that's really the shift from our team's perspective. They're really kind of focused. They're more a quality and a validation expert than they are now a data entry expert. And I think it allows them to spend more time with our tenants and building that relationship.
So maybe you partially answered the next question, but how do you think digital tools can improve service quality and consistency for tenants, especially in very large, complex housing systems like yours?
Yeah, I think inconsistency itself is a challenge because the work that we do spread across multiple systems, processes, workflows, and typically where I see failure points is the clumsy handoffs, right? If you think about a process that goes end to end, lots of clumsy handoffs. And I think AI tools can help streamline process and facilitate information to go from one end to the other. Also, I find that in the housing sector, I would say we're data rich, but information insights poor. Because we have such large data sets, it's very hard for us to look at insights and find trends that are valuable to help us as leaders within the sector to make better decisions. If I told you that I have $500,000 today, what would be the next thing you would invest in? I don't think we would have insights based on data that comes out to make that investment in the right way. And so I think that's going to allow us to get insights from information, large data sets. And for tenants, this shows up as like clearer communication, more consistent response, service that works the same regardless of where you are or where you live. I think the result is not less human interaction. I think it's better supported, more reliable services that's easier to navigate, is what you could expect with the implementation of technology that supports individuals. So I think the technology is in the background and the person's at the forefront as the main point of contact for our tenants.
So with the predictive tools you're talking about that are being explored for maintenance, tenant support, rent, can you share an example of how this kind of innovation could shift housing from being reactive to proactive?
Absolutely. We have a good example. And this was not even available a year ago. We recently implemented a new module called Accounts Analytics. So historically, arrears are addressed after a payment is missed, right? By that point, tenants are already kind of stressed and staff start what I call the chase and initiate the tenant debt collection process. Well, Arrear Analytics looks at patterns and trends across accounts. It helps us identify early warning signs that a household might be at risk, and it allows service to shift from enforcement to early support. Our staff are now focusing their effort on reaching out proactively, and they understand better what's happening, and they connect tenants with the right supports before the situation becomes more complex. For us, it's really a big shift. It's moving from a kind of a reactive to a proactive state. And it's, in a way, helping us support housing sustainability and better outcomes for tenants. So we've only had this in place 30 days, and we're already seeing incredible outreach that's happening. And we're preventing, well, it's been about 45 days, we're not getting the same levels of people being delinquent on their payment come the first of the month because of the proactive work we're doing ahead of time as a result of information. Again, with 16,000 homes, it's really hard for you to look at data information in an account and see a trend or thread to say, this is a household that probably needs my proactive effort to ensure their finances are stable. And this provides it to us. So this wasn't available a year ago. So we kind of are on every tool that we have internally. We're kind of already proactively reaching out to the suppliers and saying, anything new on your roadmap, we want to hear. We want to hear about it first. Anybody that's implemented anything successfully, we want to hear about it. We want to have conversation with those organizations, understand the impact it's had. And we'll figure out from a funding perspective how we can make that possible. But the return on the investment is happening at a really rapid rate, especially if they're built into the existing systems that you have. Right? That's instead of building a system alone, like we've tried with the rent calculator process. Anytime you're doing it in a system that's already in place, you have a higher degree of success.
Very cool. We have no doubt, there's going to be listeners on the show, and of course all of us will have the concern in the space that technology can remove the human side of services. You were speaking about how you keep individuals at the focus point of what you do. How are you ensuring innovation stays human-centered and focused on the individual needs?
Yeah, that concern is absolutely understandable. There is a risk if AI is deployed with the wrong mindset. So as leaders, I think we have a responsibility. There's a really good report, The State of AI in 2025 by McKinsey, and I'll be glad to share with you the link. And their research demonstrates, and there's quite a bit of detail and quite a bit of information, but the one thing that really stood out to me is that successful AI adoption in high-performing organization comes from focusing on growth, innovation, and efficiencies, not cost-cutting. Anybody that's going with the mindset of cost-cutting or reduction of resources, you'll see that they have very low success in implementation. And that mindset really matters. Now, the second dimension for us to really consider, for me, it's the first time in my 20 years in the housing sector where I see a real opportunity to reliberate resources in a meaningful way. We understand that the needs of tenants are changing and becoming more complex, and the services need more space to respond differently. But historically, it was always a trade-off because we only had a certain amount of resources. So it's something that we weren't doing to do something else. This is the first time I think we could say, you have to start thinking once technology is implemented, if we had an extra $500,000, $1 million, $100,000 at scale, the amount, it's about what would you invest next? Because I don't think as a sector, we're really kind of used to that mindset. In the private sector, it'd be called research and development. And they would have an entire department thinking about what comes next for the product or the service that we're delivering. In the housing sector, we've never had that luxury. We've been always kind of in a survival mode. So I think this is the real opportunity to be kind of in a growth mindset mode. So we need to think about creating that space as leaders for organizations to start thinking about it. It is about creating more time to build relationship and serving tenants, meeting people where they are, right? The complex needs. So that might be at their home. Simply having tenant service centers or offices, as the needs are growing, we might need to change our strategy. And we can't do that now with the resources that we have because they're kind of bogged down by all the administrative burden. So thinking about liberating that bandwidth, what is the next thing you would do to ensure that your community, the homes, and the services were improved? And for me, we talk about removing the pebble in staff's shoes. So if we place technology kind of in the background to support staff who remain the face of the organization for tenants, again, the goal is not to reduce human side of housing. It's to actually protect it, refocus it, and refocus the attention on tenants, homes, and communities.
So tell us a little more about the importance of sector-wide digital collaboration. I know you're kind of trailblazing right now. How can we collaborate as a sector? Why is it critical that housing providers work together on technology rather than in silos? Like, how do you see the future of this evolving so that we're kind of structuring out to almost that quality tenant experience across the board in community housing?
Well, the challenges faced by housing providers are not unique to one organization. So that's the starting point. And I think we agree to the limited resources, growing complexity of tenants and our requirements, our aging stock, and so forth. If providers try to solve these problems independently, again, putting my quality hat on, that's duplication of effort, which is waste. It also means it increases the cost of having outputs, and then the lessons learned are not kind of leverage shared. I think we have a lot of lessons learned. I'm sure others are on a journey where there's some lessons learned. If we were to kind of have a AI housing collaboration hub, would we be better positioned as a sector to say, okay, what's the next thing we should all be working on collectively? And if we all invested a smaller portion but had more resources available to it, would we get better outcomes? And I think most importantly, I think even if you are successful within your organization, then becomes the conversation about how do you scale solutions across the sector. But I think any one of us is benefiting from technology and the advancement of technology. I think we should all benefit from it. So how do we make that happen? And I think technology moves way too fast for any one provider to navigate alone. I think if we work together on solutions, the sector can focus on what matters the most. And for us, I think we all collectively agree it's improving outcomes for our tenants and building long-term resilience across the community and the sector.
So how can housing providers get involved? And also, like, from the work that you're doing there, do you plan to share this at a broader level to housing providers? Not to put you on the spot, but if you can't answer, then how can housing providers get involved suffices.
Yeah, we're always interested in sharing our experiences, best practices, and in return receive other people's experience. I think we need to be a bit more intentional about figuring out how do we initiate these discussions. I think everybody's at a different part of their journey. That famous bell curve, there's going to be the early adopters. The majority of people are going to come about kind of in the middle, and then we have our late adopters. So how do we ensure that we have movement within the sector and the adaptation of AI within our sector at a consistent rate? For me, the important thing is to start really small. You don't need a big transformation. You don't need a large investment. It's about figuring out a real problem with staff face every single day, or that tenants experience every single day, and then asking, could technology help? Use pilots, use cases, low risk, high value ideas, learn what works, what doesn't, and then just adjust. Invest in AI literacy. I mean, training, and make it part of your development program. I would also say talk to your peers. There's lots of forums, lots of discussions that are happening at different table. Can technology, AI be part of that innovation roadmap for our sector? I think it's not about having all the answers and just being really curious, intentional, and willing to take the first step. The one message I got clearly, I went to an AI conference at Carleton University last year, and the one message I came across, and I've repeated it over and over within the organization, I think people are probably sick and tired of hearing it from me, is that basically, if you're not using AI, you're falling behind as an individual, as an organization, at the macro level, as a country, because other countries, other organizations, other individuals are all in. There is literally a race to who's going to have the latest and most impactful AI technology. So at least be part of the conversation. And if this is your first time trying it, well, lucky you. You're trying a generation of, let's say, a large language model, let's say Copilot or ChatGPT. That's much better than the early adopters used anyways. So you're going to be testing, trying, attempting to use technology that's already more advanced. And you'll be at the exact same place as everybody else is, because you're using the exact same product. So nobody's left behind. Everybody has a chance to join, and hopefully you just take the first step.
Very cool. I remember when one of my kids were in university and ChatGPT had just hit, and there was like their final project, and the professor asked them, I think it was the IB business program, who used AI in your final assignment. And of course, nobody was going to claim it at that point. And he ended up scolding them all, saying, well, you should have, because that's the future of where things are headed. And so to your point of how quickly we can be left behind if we kind of stick to what we're comfortable with or what we know, we have to get out there, be curious, learn, explore. So looking ahead, what excites you the most about the role responsible technology could play in strengthening communities and improving outcomes for tenants?
Great question. And to your point, before I answer the question, there was almost a moment of shame initially, right? When the tool came out, who used it and who's using it and why are you using it? and people weren't admitting to using it, versus now people are saying, not only am I using it, I've built an agent that allows the agent reviews my board report on a monthly basis, which reduced the waste, and now people are proud of it. From what excites me, I think responsible AI can give housing back what it needs the most. I think it's time to care, time to connect, time to prevent. It is a moment where technology stops being about systems and starts being about people. And I think if it gives us more time to care, then we're using it the right way. And one thing I've been a bit disciplined on doing is, as I'm finding ways to leverage AI technology to support even myself in my personal utilization, and I'm freeing up time, I am booking now the time I've freed up to do research on AI. I am not replacing it with more busy work. I am replacing it with research time to see if there's anything else that I'm not aware of that I should be aware of to position the organization to be ready. And I think making that conscious decision to try to shift the type of work that we're doing and be more in the exploratory or the being really curious, I think will allow us to really kind of advance as a sector.
I love that. How clever is that? And because you're so clever, let me ask you, totally off script, how do you create an agent?
Well, I'm not the expert in doing so, and I'll use the example. We have an executive administrative assistant who everybody got kind of an introduction to Copilot as we're deploying the tool throughout the organization. So I think the first 20 individuals got a training, and it showed you how to develop an agent. You go on the side and you teach the agent things. So in her case was specifically on how to redact file as a request for privacy would come in. What are the things and components you'd want removed from a document? And you educate the agent through conversation. So it does the work. Oh no, you've missed these 5 things. You then change your script for what they need to do the next time, and then so forth. And as you input more direction, more prompts, the better the output that you're getting. So, and even after quite a few back and forth interactions, you take that entire interaction, put it into an AI tool and say, what's the prompt that I'm not asking you that I should be asking you to improve the outcome? And it actually helps you with prompts. So if there's one skill I'm teaching my little guy who's 9 years old right now, is the ability to ask the right question, the prompt. And I think that's probably going to be one of the most valuable skills in the next 5 to 10 years, is your ability to ask the right questions to get the outcomes that you're looking for. And that's how you're building your agent as well. You're asking questions, but you're also providing it a directive of what you're looking as an output or outcome.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much for such an insightful conversation. I have to ask you to please say your last name for me before you go, so I don't butcher it.
You wouldn't be the first, and my last name is Cadieux.
Okay, I was going to say Cadieux, and I was like, I better be sure. Thank you so much, Alain, for joining us. It's exciting to hear how responsible human-centered technology can reduce burden, improve consistency, and open the door to more proactive, supportive housing systems. I loved what you said about how it's actually freeing us, and that's a way to think about it differently. I think for our listeners, it actually is not like pushing out human-centered service. It is really freeing us to do more of what the sector loves to do, and that is to put people at our focus. So the work you're leading is clearly shaping what the future of housing can look like, and we're so grateful you took the time to share that vision with us. Thank you so much for joining us on the show today.
My absolute pleasure. Thank you, Emmy.
Oh, and for the listeners, we will put the link of the report Alain mentioned as well on the website in the blurb. So stay tuned. Take care, Alain.
Have a good day.
You too. Special thanks to Alain for such a thoughtful and grounded conversation. It's exciting and reassuring to hear how responsible human-centered technology can reduce burden for staff, improve consistency for tenants, and help housing systems move from crisis response towards prevention and proactive care. These conversations show leadership and innovation that doesn't have to come at the cost of humanity. In fact, When done well, it can strengthen relationships, improve trust, and ultimately build stronger communities. To our listeners, thank you for spending time with us on the way home, a podcast brought to you by Blue Door. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe, share it with a colleague, and join us next time as we continue exploring what it takes to make home possible.
You're listening to On the Way Home with your host, Emmy Kelly.